Hi, Yvette Van Veen here from Awesome Dogs. I own Awesome Dogs, and I'm also a pet writer. I'm here with Karma today, but I also have Kip, the ex-Scotch Ripper, and Icarus. I'm here to do a video on the Transparency Challenge. Eileen has challenged me to do this video, and the video concept is based on 3 questions by Jean Donaldson. The first one being, what would I do as a trainer if my dog were to get something right? And I think it's a simple answer on one hand, which is that I would make sure that I reinforce my dog. But I think on the other hand, to me, there is this idea of making sure that I'm using positive reinforcement, that it's not just about the food. I need to really consider the individuality of the dog, and I also need to carefully and evaluate, am I using positive reinforcement or am I using deprivation and then adding some things in to get the dog to work? So for me, it's all about making sure that I'm creating value in the skills and joy in the dog, and that they really want to work with me. And I can see that in their attitude. Now, each dog, I find, it doesn't have to be food. I do use a lot of food in my training, especially teaching initial skills. So for example, if my dog sits, I might give him a treat, but that doesn't mean that I always use treats. Karma loves tub games. She also loves running and playing, which she's doing right now. Other things that I might use, she loves playing in gravel or leaves, and I'll use that just that we get out there and play when she does what I want her to do. So for example, Karma, come! Atta girl. Sit. Yes, good girl. That's my girl. So for me, it's all about the game and the fun and the joy, and making sure that I've got this criteria set up where what I'm asking the dog to do is what I'm clearly communicating that. Good. That's a good girl. Nice job. Ready? All right, so question number 2 is, what am I going to do if the dog gets something wrong? Now, to me, this is a really important question because on the surface, the answer I think a lot of people would give is that they would ignore it. Other people might say that they'd reevaluate, which I do agree with. If my dog has made errors, then I am going to reevaluate my training plan. It is up to me to make sure that I am the best teacher that I can be. However, that being said, when I was first starting over and reducing the amount of corrections that I was giving, one of the things that I clearly remember is that a lot of the balanced and force trainers at the time would make quite a deal out of, so what are you going to do if the dog is jumping on grandma? You're going to let him knock grandma over? And the answer is, of course, no, you're not going to. When we're making these decisions on what I'm going to do when the dog gets it wrong, it's about looking at the bigger picture. And of course, I'm not going to let the dog knock grandma over. And yes, I completely understand. There are people that go to, they get dogs that have a past, and those dogs might already have a history of problem behavior that is firmly ingrained. There are dogs that perhaps, young dogs, early separations, rough, lack bite inhibition. And in these situations, these dogs are nipping and biting, and it would simply be cruel to allow this dog to continue nipping at a child, or perhaps a dog that's going after a cat. So in terms of this question, I think it's really important because no human is perfect. There will be times when things happen, and what we need to ask ourselves, and I think that measure and the question that Jean was addressing is, what are you going to do when life happens? Because that's the moment in time that I think really tells people what you will do in a given situation. So to me, it's a really important question, and what I tend to do, I make sure that I've controlled the environment, I have set the dog up for success, I reevaluate whether I'm teaching at the right level, I'm doing so clearly, and I make sure that I put every effort I can into the dog getting it right. However, in those times when something does go wrong, absolutely, I'm not going to allow the dog to continue to be reinforced for behavior that I don't want to continue. But that being said, I'm not going to use fear. I'm not going to use pain. I'm not going to use startle. I'm not going to it's not my job to come in and use those emergency moments for a training moment. it's all about saying, this is what I want to create, but I'm just going to withdraw the reinforcement from the behaviors that I don't like. So now there's question number 3, which is, do I think there's a less invasive way of handling things? And I think for that one, I want to take you to another location to illustrate a point, because I think that one is another sort of interesting in-depth question that if you really think hard about it, there's some interesting answers and debates that can come out of that one. So let's go over to actually the park and the pool. Okay, so I'm here with Karma, taking you down to the pool. The pool is closed for the summer, unfortunately. But I thought the pool was an interesting place to talk about this third question of, is there a less invasive way of training my dog? And I think it makes for an interesting discussion point, because when it comes to pools, I'm not sure how many people know, but I used to be really quite afraid of deep water as a child. My mother was as well, and so was my son. And one of the things is that the easiest, most stress-free way of dealing with this problem is to avoid the problem. I could say, you know what, you don't want to swim, that's fine. You never have to swim. I could absolutely make that decision. But there's a cost to those types of choices when you take environmental management avoidance as your strategy. And there are times when that might be appropriate, but there are also times when it's not so appropriate. Or it's a decision that shouldn't be made lightly. So when it comes to the pool, I have to ask myself things like, what happens if my son is accidentally pushed into a body of water? Have I endangered him by not preparing him to face that? Or what about if I take him out to a party, pool party, and the kids are having a great time and he can't participate? My decision to say, no, you can avoid this situation, also means that I have created he's lost this pleasurable experience, this ability to go out and have fun with other kids. So yes, I do think that there are times when avoidance might be less stressful, but I don't think it arms us to face life and thrive. So when it comes to things like the pool with kids, you have things like wading pools, kiddie pools, or coaching. You pick a fabulous coach who knows how to build the kids' skills up. So I take that same approach to when it comes to dogs. If there's a situation where I say, you know, this is really a rare situation, yeah, I might take environmental consequences or avoidance. I might say, this just isn't worth my time. There are other times, however, where I'm going to say, you know what, you face this on a daily basis, and I personally don't want to live a life where every time somebody comes into the house, I'm going to put you out in the yard because you're just not capable of handling this, and that's my permanent choice. To me, as a permanent choice, I think that's actually creating that same swimming pool situation where it's not arming the dog to be able to live this full life. I also think that, you know, it's the important part of it is, are we questioning ourselves, and are we looking at every single decision and asking, what are the risks and what are the benefits to any choice? And I know that I can get a dog out into a social situation out in public. As you can see, Karma's not overly concerned. And I can do this with positive reinforcement, with counter conditioning. I don't have to avoid it, but I do need to be very aware that I can do this in small stages and build their confidence up so that they are armed to face the world, because my job isn't necessarily to bubble wrap, but my job is definitely to reinforce the dog with what they like. And seeing as how there's a moth that's flying around every so often, and my dog's gotten it right, I want to make sure I gave him a cookie. So I need to nominate some people now, and I think the people that I really want to nominate, now they're busy people, so I would, if they don't do it, I completely understand, no pressure, but I would say Bob Bailey is someone that hugely influenced me back in the Yahoo days when the groups were there, and I just can't imagine anybody better to learn from. And another person would be Susan Garrett, who has influenced so many people and said, you know, we're talking about getting results, so to me results is another part of this question. And then the other person I'd say is Turid Brugas, because she's the one person that years back pointed out that when we're seeing things like sniffing or hyperplay, that we might actually be dealing with stress, and made us aware to think about the dog. And I also respected her because when she was introduced to the stage many, many years ago, when I saw her, she kind of waved her arms and she says, no, I'm just a dog trainer. And to me, that speaks to that transparency value, that we are trying to communicate, this is what I'm going to do, this is how I'm going to get there, this is what I won't do, and results. So the other part of it to me is also, what is my end goal with this dog? And I wanted to touch on that in my video because I hadn't seen that a lot in terms of that. And I'm hoping that this video sort of starts maybe discussion along those lines. So thank you, and hopefully I'll see those videos from those awesome people because I love learning from them. Thanks, and have a great day.